What happened? I don't want to know what happened. Oh, it's okay. It survived. Hello homemakers, I'm Melinda and I'm cooking my way through Betty Crocker's 1971 recipe card library. And today we're making lemon meringue chiffon. All right, lemon meringue chiffon is from section I, Dessert Spectaculars, and it's card number 15. And I'm excited for this because I've never made a chiffon cake before. I don't even know if I've tasted a chiffon cake, but they're really popular a few decades ago. And it's basically a cross between your traditional like butter-based or shortening-based cake and a sponge cake, like an angel food cake. So it's got the flavor of a regular cake, but the lightness and airiness of a sponge cake. And it's just very, I guess, delicate and elegant, and I'm excited to try it. This is particularly complicated because not only are we making the chiffon cake, but we are going to fill it with a lemon filling and then frost it with a meringue frosting and then put it back in the oven for the meringue to like kind of toast. So it seems really complicated, but I think it will be a dessert spectacular in the end. I think it will be beautiful, I hope. So I'm excited, let's get started. So the recipe card says to bake our lemon chiffon cake mix as directed on package. Now they don't make boxed chiffon cake mix anymore, so I'm gonna have to make it from scratch. So I'm using the recipe in the Betty Crocker picture cookbook. This is the 1972 edition. If you haven't seen my video all about Betty Crocker's picture cookbook, I'll make sure to put a link in the description or up here. But yes, so she has a recipe for orange chiffon cake that you can easily substitute lemon for orange. So we're gonna do that. So this is pretty typical cake ingredients: flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, salad oil, aka vegetable oil is the kind of the mystery ingredient here. 7 egg yolks, cold water, grated lemon zest, a cup of egg whites, cream of tartar, and that's it for the chiffon cake. Then for the lemon filling, we will need another cup of sugar, some cornstarch, some salt, some frozen lemonade concentrate, and 4 egg yolks. And then we're gonna use the whites of those 4 egg yolks to make the meringue that goes around the outside. So yeah, a lot of ingredients here, but it's pretty standard cake stuff, right? I'm shocked by the number of eggs. 7 eggs in the cake, 4 eggs in the filling and the meringue. Let's get started. Okay, so the first step is to stir together the dry ingredients. And I learned from Betty this technique for how to measure flour. So the idea is we need 2 cups of flour. So we're gonna spoon the flour into the measuring cup. Don't just like put the measuring cup in here, because what you're doing is you're packing the flour in too heavily. So this is like a lighter way to measure the flour and to get an accurate cup measurement, which is, you know, when you're cooking her recipes, you wanna make sure you're using her techniques for how to measure. Here we go. Now we need 1.5 cups of sugar. So that's a half, that's another half, and that's another half. 1.5 cups of sugar. Then we need 3 teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2, 3. And I read that one of the reasons the chiffon cake is so light and airy is because you use 2 methods of rising agent. And then the last thing we need is the salt, which is 1 teaspoon of salt. All right, so I'm just gonna stir this, the dry ingredients together. All right, now we're gonna separate out 7 egg yolks from their whites, and we're gonna keep both, because we need both parts. So this is gonna be our whites bowl. Okay, 1. All right. Just gonna let these sit back here, relax. Okay, so now we've made a little well in our dry ingredients, and it says in this order, add oil. That's a half a cup of vegetable oil. Now we're gonna add the 7 egg yolks. Just some of them broke. And then water. How much water? 3/4 of a cup of water. My well is not big enough. And then the lemon zest. I'm just gonna zest this whole lemon here. I'm not really measuring it, but it said 2 teaspoons. And then 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Okay, we sure it's 2 teaspoons? Yeah, okay, 2 teaspoons. Seems like a lot of vanilla, but not my cake. Stir until smooth. I don't smell the lemon anymore. I don't know what I smell. Egg yolk mostly. Okay, so now we're gonna whip the egg whites, and I read that it's really important to have a super clean bowl with no oil in it, and that's why it was important to get no egg yolk in the whites, is because in order to get it whipped really well, it has to be no oil anywhere. So we only need a cup of egg whites, so it might not be this full bowl. Let me measure it. So this is a cup of egg whites that I'm putting into our large bowl. So then this is a half teaspoon of cream of tartar. And that's gonna help kind of also help with the binding of the egg white and the getting it fluffy, I believe. Let's see what we can do here. I forget if overbeating it is a thing. It might be. You might not want to overbeat it. This reminds me, the first dessert I did for this channel also used a meringue. It was orange baked Alaskas. And it was kind of my first time making a meringue. Okay, so we have our whipped egg whites, and now we're going to just fold in the rest of the batter, and we're gonna kind of do it in chunks. You don't want to do it all at once because you'll deflate the egg whites you just worked so hard to get the stuff whipped into. So I'm gonna do like a third of it maybe, and we're folding. All right. So this is my tube pan. It's 10 inches wide by 4 inches deep, which is what this recipe calls for. It has these 2 components. I think they go together like this. So we're gonna pour it in the tube pan and bake it like this. And then when it comes out of the oven, you flip it over and let it cool like this. So let's pour it in. Yay! All right, we're gonna put it in the oven at 325 for 75 minutes. Okay, so while the cake is in the oven, we can make the lemon filling. So again, we're gonna need 4 egg yolks. So I'm gonna separate out the egg yolks from the egg whites again. I'm gonna keep these egg whites safe and sound for our final meringue frosting. Okay, so for the lemon filling, we'll need a cup of sugar. There's so much sugar. What did I put, 1.5 cups in the other thing? Cup of sugar. 3 tablespoons of cornstarch is a lot. And a half teaspoon of salt. Okay, so I started to put this in a bowl, but then I realized it needed to be in a saucepan because we're doing this over the stove. So I'm putting the sugar and the cornstarch and the salt in a saucepan. Then we're gonna add, let's see, half of this, we need 3 ounces, which is half of this can. No, wait. So we need 6 ounces, which is half of this can. Okay. Now we're gonna gradually stir this into the sugar mixture. Just gonna wait. Just waiting for it to boil. We've reached a boil. So now we're gonna do something that I forget what it's called, but I think it's called tempering. We're gonna put a little bit of this hot mixture in the egg yolk. Let me show you what I mean. We're gonna pour at least half of this hot mixture into the egg yolk. Then we're gonna put this back in with the rest. See these white chunks, which I believe were egg white, that made its way into the yolk? That makes me nervous. We're supposed to remove it from the heat and let it cool completely. I want to strain it because I'm nervous about those little bits of egg white that were in there. So I'm just gonna put it through this mesh strainer and see what we can catch. See, those were egg whites that got like, whatchamacallit, cooked. Our final filling. All right, while our cake is cooling, I thought we could do a little Betty history. The history of chiffon cake is actually really fun. Betty Crocker claims that chiffon cake is the first new cake in 100 years. So before 1948, there's really only two types of cake. There was your traditional like shortening or butter-based cake, and then there was sponge cakes like angel food cake. So a man named Harry Baker, coincidence, started the chiffon revolution. He was an insurance salesman from Hollywood, California, who dreamed of combining the richness of a butter cake with the lightness of a sponge cake. So after 300 attempts, he came out with the chiffon cake, and it really quickly became a big hit in Hollywood. He started a catering company, and all of the big executives in Hollywood needed the chiffon cake at their events. And it started to become so popular that even people like Eleanor Roosevelt would visit and have chiffon cake and ask for the recipe, and Harry wouldn't give it up. He wanted to keep the recipe a secret. So over 20 years passed, and Harry kept his chiffon recipe a closely guarded secret. But then when he heard that Betty Crocker was the second most famous woman in America, he wanted to pay her a visit. So he went to the Betty Crocker kitchens in Minneapolis, and he met with some General Mills executives. So General Mills started negotiations to purchase his recipe, but they wouldn't finalize the deal until they heard his secret ingredient. And what Harry had been keeping secret all these years was that instead of shortening, he used cooking oil. So Harry Baker left with a large undisclosed sum, and the Betty Crocker team got to work refining his recipe for their audiences. And a little under a year later, they came out with Betty Crocker's recipe for lemon chiffon cake. It premiered in women's magazines like Better Homes and Gardens, Ladies' Home Journal, McCall's, and it became a hit immediately. Everyone around the country started making chiffon cake. The cakes became a huge craze, and people demanded more flavors. So in addition to lemon chiffon, they came out with recipes for coconut chiffon, spicy chiffon, chocolate chip chiffon, maple pecan chiffon, royal Hawaiian chiffon, banana chiffon, sambar chiffon, burnt sugar chiffon, holiday fruit chiffon, bit of walnut chiffon, cocoa chiffon, peppermint chiffon, and cherry nut chiffon. But like any fad, popularity did not endure, and nowadays people don't even really know what chiffon cake is. It was kind of lost to our collective memory, probably because it's so complicated to make. All right, back to our second time beating eggs today. These are the 4 egg whites that we kept when we used the yolks in the filling. So I'm gonna put these in a nice big bowl. We're going to start by just beating them until just starting to get foamy, and then we'll add the sugar in. Okay, so we've got some foam. She says to add 1 tablespoon of this at a time. This is a cup of brown sugar, but I'm just going to eyeball it. Just going to put in a little bit at a time. I think we finally have a stiff peak. So now we're gonna add in a teaspoon of lemon peel, AKA I'm just gonna zest this lemon into here. I'm not gonna measure it. I'm sure like a lemon is kind of a teaspoon's worth. We need a tablespoon of lemon juice. Okay, now we assemble the cake. This has been cooling for like 3 hours. Upside down. You have to let it cool upside down, otherwise it'll deflate upon itself. So it goes like this. Does that make sense? You let it cool upside down. That's all I know. There she is. What happened? I don't want to know what happened. Oh, it's okay. It survived. Descend. It worked! Okay, this next step is gonna be difficult. I know right now I'm not cutting it evenly into 3 layers, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. Okay, now this looks a little looser than you think you need. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna see like a layer of lemon filling like you do in the photo. This seems not thick enough for that. Okay, so that lemon filling was bizarre and I don't think I did it right, but we're pressing onward. I'm gonna start to ice it. Now, what I read in the cookbook is that you do a thin layer of icing to hold the crumbs in, and then we go back in with another layer. So that's what I'm gonna do. Is this worthwhile? Is this a waste of my time? We're just gonna plop it all on. We're gonna see what happens. Will it meringue? Will it not meringue? We're gonna put this in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes, and I'll be right back. All right, so the cake's come out of the oven, the meringue is set, and a little toasty. So now I wanna move it to this tray, and I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but. All right, after a lot of fighting, we got this onto the tray, and it kind of messed up the edges in the process. I don't know how she expects you to plate this. Am I just supposed to serve it to my guests on a sheet pan? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Now I'm gonna drizzle this lemon filling over it as well. Okay. We did it! The cake's done! Oh. Okay. Okay. I excavated a piece. Yeah, you can barely see the lemon filling in those sections. It just like was a little too loose, I think. It should have been thicker to kind of really create a filling, but here we go. I'm gonna take a bite. Is this the chiffon cake everyone raves about? This is really just a regular cake that's a little bit lighter and fluffier. I don't know if it was worth all the drama, all the struggle. Like, it's very tart, and so the sugary meringue really helps balance out the flavor. Like, the bites I'm taking that are just cake aren't as good as the bites with some meringue. Okay, that's a good slice of cake. Was it worth all the trouble? I don't know, but it's a good slice of cake. All right, lemon meringue chiffon. This one, I was excited to do a chiffon cake because I've never done it, I've never made it before, I've never tasted one before, and so it was a fun experience to make such an elaborate cake, but was not worth it taste-wise. Like, it really just tasted like a normal cake. I was expecting way too much. I had high expectations from Harry Baker's cake spectacular. So it's still delicious, but would I make it again? Probably not. It's just so much work when a box cake is kind of the same. Sorry, Betty. So maybe I give it 3 out of 5 red spoons. All right, back in the box. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, happy homemaking.